Hello and welcome to the show, everybody out there in Facebook land. My name is Judah Hoover, and I did it the wrong way. I'm so used to being on this side that I
I know,
forgot that it's
man.
actually this way. This
Well,
over here
remember,
is Josh Weidman, who got on the link before I did today, and so he is on the coveted left side of the browser. You can always tell who gets here first by who is on the left side. Ladies and gentlemen, we come to you every day with mortgage, real estate investing, and realtor news and analysis and content. Specifically on Friday. Friday is our news wrap-up show.
yep.
And we've got a ton of both good and bad and exciting news to go over with everybody here today. And
Yeah.
so let's dive in, Josh. What do we got going on?
Well, all right. So you're a little bit ahead of me here. I mean, this is I don't think you can categorize really anything as terrible news this week. You know what I mean?
And
Like,
ladies and gentlemen, for Josh Weidman to be saying that, resident curmudgeon
that's it.
and all round pessimist on the
Right.
economy and life in general. He for him to say there's no terrible news this week. What does that tell you, ladies and gentlemen?
There's nothing terrible.
Right?
Yeah,
It's very
right
exciting.
before we jump in here, I just want to remind everybody, make sure you comment and share. Every day we give away a free gift to the best comment. So, you see some past winners here. We're giving away HMB t-shirts and a copy of my book. If you're interested, comment. We'd love to hear what you have to say. All right, so
Yeah, we love our listeners, by the way, and that's just one of the ways that we can give back. So if you're here and you're watching us, we greatly appreciate you and thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly. So let's jump into housing. All right. So those pesky appraisers, Judah.
I
Those
know.
pesky appraisers. Now, I don't know about you, but I have definitely had this situation where I get a house on the market. There's multiple offers for the listing. People are putting in bids. They're fighting over the property, and you agree on a price. And then, they check that little box on the sales contract that says contingent upon appraisal.
Right.
And then the appraisal comes back $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 short, and all of the sudden, the sales price changes. And unfortunately, that's money that just flows right out of your pocket.
Right.
Right now, that's a big problem, because of some of the factors that we've discussed a lot on this show, namely, pent-up demand from COVID. We got
Well, stop. Let's back up. So what
Yeah.
is an appraiser? An appraiser is a third party. They're not the buyer. They're not the seller. They're not the buyer's agent. They're not the seller's agent. They're not the lender. They kind of work for the buyer and kind of work for the lender. And they certainly, but they also, everybody else in the transaction, except for the appraiser, has what's called empathy for the transaction, meaning the realtors don't get paid unless they can get their knucklehead buyer and seller to agree. Title company doesn't get paid unless they can find out a way to overcome and satisfy any and all title liens or judgments or anything like that. Everybody except for the appraiser, and I could be, maybe I'm thinking of somebody else there, and also like inspections, termites, and things like that. They all have empathy for the transaction, meaning they want it to close. The appraiser, for good and bad reasons, gets paid whether the refinance closes or not. Gets paid whether the loan, whether the purchase happens or not. So when you hire Bob Smith, the appraiser, to go out and take a look at that value, even though he looks at the sales contract, he's not supposed to be shooting for that value. He's supposed to say, I think this house is worth XYZ. He's not working for the buyer, he's not working for the seller, and he does not have empathy for the transaction. He is paid whether it closes or not. And that's a good check and balance on the system. Now, how does he determine what the value is? Well, in a free market economy, something is worth what the market says it's worth. But just to keep there from being fraud or things like that, saying, hey, Josh, sell me your $100,000 house for $200,000 and I'll go to the bank and get a $150,000 loan on it.
Right.
Sell me your $100,000 house for $200,000. We'll make up $100,000 worth of equity. There's somebody there interested in talking about appraisals. And then what can happen is if I go to a bank and get a $150,000 mortgage, we've defrauded that bank by $50,000, and then Josh, you and I can split that $50,000.
Right.
So, and that is a fraud that happens from time to time when you get buyer and seller or straw buyers involved and an appraiser that's crooked. So having independent appraisers that are independently licensed is how you fight that fraud. So appraisers serve as a very valuable piece of the industry, but they determine value based on comparable sales. What is a house like this sold for in a reasonably close period of time, usually 6 months or less, in a reasonably short distance, under 2 miles, half a mile is the best. So, but right now the market's been exploding so much that sales comps aren't keeping up with what new sales are, and new sales aren't getting registered enough for appraisers to be able to use them.
Yeah, so exactly, and when they're looking at appraiser, like an appraiser gets their mandate from. I've got a real life emergency. Give me 2 seconds here, but
dude, you go ahead and take care of Roger, and I will keep on talking about appraisers. So here's the situation. The challenge is that right now we're in a white hot real estate market that's fueled by pent up demand, that's fueled by low interest rates, and fueled by low inventory. So when you have supply and demand, when you've got not only do you have excess demand for something that would cause prices to go up, you have extremely low inventory that would cause prices to go up, and then you also, the financing associated with it is at all-time record lows as well. Those three things are just really making this housing market white hot, and appraisers are having a difficult time justifying prices. Here's why this is important. Similar issues occurred in 2006 and 2007, prior to the 2008 financial crisis. And when you see that trifecta of things, high demand, low supply, low interest rates, it causes a lot of people to scratch their head and say, hey, I remember this from happening very recently. So will this be another 2008? Won't it be another 2008? Time will only tell. But there are some things pointing in the direction to make some people concerned.
Yeah, I've seen this movie before. It happens, right? Speaking of mortgage rates, there's some interesting things on the mortgage front that have come up this week.
Yes.
First and foremost, I saw the most outrageously low mortgage rate I have ever seen. Even though we're 3 basis points higher in the prime rate. I saw who is it? Something Washington Mutual? No, United Wholesale Mortgage is offering its clients a 1.99% 30-year fixed mortgage rate. That's outrageous.
There must be a point on there or something like that. They must be.
I'm sure, but I mean, that's pretty outrageous and it's pretty amazing. I actually was looking elsewhere to see if there were comparable rates. There's a couple other lenders that are offering like 2.65%, in the mid to high twos with maybe a point or two. But my goodness, you're paying a point or two on the mortgage. It makes so much sense to get, that lower interest rate. It's like free money. It's really something else.
Right. So by the way, a point on the interest rate, that is, if you're taking out a $200,000 loan, that means you're getting that interest rate, but you're also paying the bank a fee right up front of 1%. So if you take out a $200,000 loan, that's a $2,000 fee that you're paying the bank. And typically points pay for themselves in 2 to 3 years pretty quickly. So if you're interested in being in the loan, you should for more than 2 to 3 years, which why wouldn't you be in it for all 30 years at this point? You should probably go ahead and consider paying points. All right, now Josh, you have something here that's going to lead to. I like the way you talked about this, a tax on loan amounts. Leg us into this, my friend. What causes
business? Sneaky business, right? So what we've seen continually is, if you read the news every day, what you see is the Fed keeps talking about lowering interest rates. We're getting closer to zero. We're getting closer to zero. We're at 0% interest. And I've heard from a lot of people, well, if we're at 0% interest, why isn't my mortgage at 0%?
Right.
And there's a difference there in the numbers. What the FHFA, Federal Housing Finance Association or administration, okay,
Yep.
what they realized is that even though their basis rate has been dropping, most mortgage lenders are not dropping proportionally to the drops in the base rate. And they realized that it's because these greedy people are just making more money. And so they decide we're gonna take advantage of this too. And they add a tax on all refinances beginning September 1st. If you're refinancing your home, you're going to be paying 0.5% to the FHFA for that refinance based on the loan amount.
Right. And what's frustrating about that is taxes get paid by consumers, not by companies. It just gets passed through.
Yep.
Also, I want to check the books on FHFA because there has been excess profits returned to Treasury. Because FHFA came in and bailed out Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and a lot of the other lenders out there that were quasi-governmental. During the financial crisis, they became full governmental agencies with like a little buffer between them. But they have more than paid back the buyout and then some because of all of the excess money paid to Treasury. These are essentially taxing arms. And this is only going to bump up the amount of money that we are paying to the Treasury.
That's right. That's right. And I mean, not to say that, look, we we don't have a big hole to fill. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and we have such a big hole to fill because there's been such record low inflation. I'm very hawkish when it comes to inflation. I'm a strong dollar guy. I'm a hawk on inflation. Don't get me wrong on any of that stuff. The problem is we've had so little inflation for so long that we need some inflation because it when you deal with an economy as big as ours, if we don't consistently have a 2% inflation rate, then our debt just keeps on getting bigger. And part of how you get rid of your debt is by inflating your debt away. That's
Yeah.
why the old adage from my ultimate conservative friends is twinkle roses are red, violets are blue, taxation is theft, inflation is too. Have you heard that one? Roses are red, violets are blue,
All
taxation
right.
is theft, inflation is too. So inflation really is just theft, and it is just another form of tax. And that may or may not be a good thing. We may or may not want to talk about that. I'm not right now taking a political or monetary position. I'm just saying it's built into a 2% inflation is built into everything we have. And so I think that part of the other reason why they're doing something like this is they want interest rates to be low, but they also need interest rates to go up because as interest rates go up, it actually causes it can help spark some inflation to happen.
FYI, if you're watching this and you're not buying assets and you're just tossing your money into a savings account, this should be an alarm bell. Yesterday we talked about cash flow investment properties and how to analyze different areas. It's a good idea to be buying assets, and if you can't buy a second home, look for other opportunities. As inflation goes up,
Yeah,
you want.
everyone wants to talk about how the dollar's had a bad 2 or 3 months, and also people are just perennially very nervous about debt, and the GDP to debt ratio is at an all-time high, and they're very concerned about that. Well, when you look at that in the form of when you look at that in
Context.
in a vacuum, in isolation, that could be a problem to you. But when you add in the context and look at the other nations of the world where they have a negative interest rate, which means that if you put your money in a savings account, you will have less money at the end of the year. They have negative interest rates. You've got to get your money working for you to earn a rate of return. America still has the strongest currency in the world. Don't believe the hype.
All right, let's move on. to some good news about foreclosures
Yep.
and forbearance. In the past, we've talked about the forbearance issue, and in some different sectors, we've seen numbers as high as 10, 11, 12% of the total mortgage debt in this country in forbearance. Here's some good news. So forbearances have continually been dropping, and when they were first presented, there was like 4.2 million forbearances out there. As time's gone on, the 90-day moratorium on mortgages has kind of ended, and it's lending to some predictions of what's going to happen in the foreclosure market. I mean, if you think of forbearance as a short-term stopgap to stop,
to prevent foreclosures, but as more forbearances happen, it can also be a leading indicator of foreclosures.
That's right. So what we've seen here is we've gone from 4.208, essentially 4.2 million families in forbearance, whether they're, you probably have read about or seen stories about people accidentally going into forbearance, all this stuff. That's the top line. Right now, after there's been some granted renewals of that forbearance period, the number has dropped significantly. Not quite half, but almost there. We're at 2.588 million properties in forbearance. The really cool thing about this that I thought was really interesting is that 182,000, roughly 4% of the original forbearance number, they just paid their mortgage off.
Right.
But
why? I mean, that's a small percentage. So they sold the house. You know what I mean? They got behind and then they ran into problems. They got into forbearance and then they sold the house, or grandma died and gave them money, or they needed forbearance and they only, it was a $5 million house that they had a $30,000 mortgage on, and they ran into trouble making the last 10 or 15 payments. And so they got a forbearance just to kind of help them out. So there's all kinds of reasons why that could happen. But this is unburnished good news. And what I love about this, Josh, is this is one of those things that it's hard to understand without the slide. And so I'm so glad that you took the time to put this slide together, because it shows we were at 4.2, we're now at 2.5, and that's a very good thing.
All right, so that sounds like good news, but I'm gonna put this in context of even better news. Okay, so let's say 2.8 million homes slide into foreclosure, right? Or some percentage of those. Let's put this in context historically. All right, right now the quarterly foreclosure filings is at about 75,000 active foreclosure filings. Okay.
This is a national number.
National number, okay? Of that 75,000 quarterly active foreclosures, in the context of that 2.6 roughly 2.6 million properties in forbearance, they're predicting that 75,000 number, it could as much as double. So we'd be looking at 150,000. Man, my math was really bad. I put 1.5 million. Sorry about that. 150,000. Here's the upside, the good news here. Right now, we're at about 13% of the highest foreclosure rate of all time in Q2 2009. If that number were to double, we're still within historical norms. We're still within that category of historical norms that falls within a mortgage prediction default rate, right? So it shouldn't have a huge impact on the mortgage market. That's a huge deal. That is a really, really good thing, because there have been a lot of predictions, myself included, that looked at, hey, coming next year, a lot of these forbearances are going to start going into foreclosure, and it just doesn't seem to be the case. So that's a really, really good outlook.
I love this chart for a couple of reasons. The first thing that I love, oh man, I was almost using my mouse to point here. But you can see how the financial crisis really began the end of 2008. It was the election year. Remember, what's his name? The war hero, the Vietnam War hero who ran on the Republican ticket that
John
year.
McCain?
John Kerry, John
McCain.
John McCain stopped running, like even suspended his campaign for a little bit for presidency. And so that's when everything kind of started with the financial crisis. And it took it a little while to build up and get momentum. And it wasn't until, almost a year later, Q2 of 09, that we saw the peak in foreclosures. So that's one thing that's a slightly cautionary tale. Josh and I are reversing points here. He's a little bit more optimistic, and I'm just trying to be realistic to say that just, there's a lead up time that we see. Also, but here's the other thing that I do like about this chart is it's charts like this that show, if anybody would have been paying attention, you can see it at the bottom, 2006, 2007. They're hard numbers to see. The writing was kind of on the wall here for a while. But look at the writing that's been on the wall through 2016, 2017, 2019. We've been looking at some pretty, right there is where, from
that was subprime.
What's that?
That was a subprime, like overnight crash. And then jump from there. Yeah. So that was like the real beginning where everybody said, holy cow, we're in trouble.
Right. So, but you can also see before that, it was, we were picking up steam before that. We haven't seen that so far yet. And I think that is I think that is a good thing.
That's exactly right. All right. Oh, last that I thought was really awesome. As I'm researching this, I stumbled on these two little stats, and I just threw them at the bottom of the slide, right? This is really cool. 42% of homes in this country are owned free and clear.
Yeah.
42%. That's really fantastic. And of the remaining 58%, 177,000 on average in equity in the properties. That's excellent news for the health of housing in this country. And
I've always heard 50%. I've always thought that like 50% of real estate is owned free and clear or something like that. I've never been sure whether that was so 42%, 50%, 50% is one of those like water cooler numbers that people throw around. Like 50% of real estate's owned free and clear. 50% of the houses out there are owned free and clear. The point is, a lot of real estate is owned free and clear. I'm listing a house today for a guy, and it is owned free and clear. So I think that there's a lot of, Josh, think about it. You are a hard money lender making money for people that are buying properties at ridiculously low prices. The reason they can buy those properties at ridiculously low prices is because the investor is probably buying a free and clear piece of real estate.
Yeah, it's true. It doesn't hurt that the values are up significantly over the last several years. And the demand is so high. But I think that's, regardless of the reason, those are some strong housing numbers, and it should give people a lot more ease going into the fall here, especially when we have 69% of households own their property, the highest in history. That's pretty good news. That's pretty good news. The biggest news of the week, and I tried to get an applause track to play before we announced this news.
I'll be your applause track, Josh. You show it, and I'll be the applause track.
It crashed the system. There's too many programs running. But you ready?
Yep.
Oh!
Yay!
Wow.
So what do we see here? So what we see is that there is under 1 million people.
Yeah.
Yay! Less than 1 million. Less than 1 million people filed for initial jobless claims, not continuing jobless claims, initial jobless claims. That number was almost 7 million back in March.
To follow up on top of that, continuing jobless claims dropped by 600,000 in the first week of August from 16.1 million the week before to 15.5 million ongoing jobless claims. This adds a lot of credence to the conversation that a lot of people were having about people making more money staying at home than going back to work. Whether that's true or not, listen, That's a political conversation to have. It's just good news. It's
Right.
good news to see people going back to work. It's good news to see less people losing their jobs. That's huge. I mean, unemployment has been scaring me for weeks, and it's been a little bird chirping in my ear every time that I think we might be turning a corner. We're certainly not out of the woods here. Still close to 1 million filings, which is historically insanely high, but it's a big threshold to break, especially after 20 weeks over 1 million filings.
Right. I mean, we were under, 300,000, and then we jumped up to 3 million. And then the very next week, we jumped up to almost 7 million. And that was just crazy. Now, and you can see this slide here. I absolutely love this picture that you have here, because it also shows how, without the context of this slide, like a week or two ago, when people were like, oh, they're going back up, they're going back up. And I was like, yeah, they're going up marginally. Like, we're kind of finding the bottom here. And you can see that we kind of went up, and then we're finding we're going back down even by more than what we went back up. This is a beautiful slide for those people who want to see less people unemployed.
That's right. All right. So sticking with the economic news, let's talk about Apple. And before we go into the really important news that Judah and I really want to share, I think it's important to take a look at what some companies have been doing. I mean, Apple has been world renowned for having so much capital on hand. They've had like 30-50 billion dollars sitting in their bank.
Cash. That means cash. That is money that they could write a check for. That's not like, oh, this is how much money we have flowing through our accounts and stuff like that. That means this is how much money we have just sitting over here, and we don't know what to do with it.
Rainy day funds. It's insane. They just issued $5.5 billion in bonds. Essentially, they took on $5.5 billion in debt so that they have cash on hand. And I think that this is an indicator of two things. Number one, they want to make sure that they have plenty of cash for maybe some new development and new advertising and new things that are coming around the horizon. But also, I think it's an indicator of how cheap money is right now. I mean, I don't know what I don't have the numbers on what their bond yields are, but I mean, that's a pretty safe bet with a company like Apple that has the cash to buy out those bonds. In the past, they've done a lot of stock buybacks and things with their cash on hand. So for them to issue bonds and take on debt just to have capital on hand, I think that's an interesting commentary on where.
So here's what that looks like as a person. Okay. So let's say you are an individual and you've got a good job. You between you and your wife, you're bringing home 80 beans a year. And you've got a house that is, you've been paying on it for a while. You're kind of getting close to retirement age. You've got let's say a $200,000 house that you owe a $25,000 mortgage on. You know what I mean? Hey, yep. Why not refinance at record low, under 3% in rates, and not take out a crazy big mortgage, but take out a $50,000 mortgage so that you've got more money, so that you can just keep it in a rainy day fund, so you can maybe put some of it into the stock market, because even though you shouldn't gamble with money that comes out of your equity of your house, if you've got equity in your house, it's not doing you any good. And so you can borrow that money and do good things with it. Maybe pay off the car, maybe, pay for your kids' college. There's all kinds of reasons why using the equity in your house and converting it into capital could be a good thing. Apple has seen their stock prices go through the roof, which means they've got so much money, they don't know what to do with it. It means that they've been selling so much stuff. I think that part of the reason why they're doing this is Apple is finally getting pushback from their phones are no longer clearing away 1,000% better than everybody else's phone out there. I've never been a fan of Apple. I've never thought that, but the perception in the market was that Apple phones are so much better.
Dude, come on.
They also might be looking
BlackBerry versus the iPhone 1.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. For a long time, sure, absolutely. But I mean, past 10 years, I've been using a Samsung and been delighted.
It's since Steve Jobs left the company.
Yeah. So that's a very good point. I also think that they might be gearing up for some acquisitions. I think that a lot of these companies, if you look at what Bezos is doing, and you look at what Google is doing, and you look at what some of these other big companies are doing, they're investing in other companies, they're buying other companies, they're doing other things like that. Apple spends a lot of its money on internal development, and they're not as known for making acquisitions. And I think that they might be looking to Apple's a very insular company. And everything's got to be Apple. And I think that they might be looking to purchase some companies.
Okay. So we're talking about Apple. Now let's talk about them in the context of the evil empire. If you like Apple, if you've followed the progression of Apple, even if you've watched some of the movies made about Steve Jobs, one of the key points in one of those movies is they play this ad from 1980 released in 1984 for the Apple II, right?
Right.
That I mean, it was awesome ad.
Right.
Well, it seems that the tables have turned, and like the ad was published in 1984. It was based on the book 1984, and it's like this evil, oppressive empire, and at the time that was IBM. Right. And you have this innovative new person breaking down the walls. Well, now Epic Games, the creator
maker of Fortnite,
which my son loves more than probably anything else on earth.
Right.
They recently made a change to their platform where they allowed direct payments inside the app. And if you're unfamiliar with Fortnite, it is a virtual reality type game.
First-person shooter. It's called a battle royale. It randomly spawns 20 people into a virtual environment where last one. It's like tag, where when you get tagged, you're out. Except instead of tagging with your hands, you use tag with guns. It's basically.
Really cool. I gotta say, it's really cool. It really is. The best part about it. It's free.
Right.
They gave this huge platform away, and guess what happened? People signed up and played the game. Tons of people. It was always available through these third-party apps, such as the Apple App Store, the
Google Play,
Google Apps, all that kind of stuff. Well, one of the terms of use for the Google or for Apple's App Store is you need to all incoming payments need to go through Apple,
and they take a 30% bite of that Apple.
Up to a 30%. Exactly. So they're only getting 70% of the revenue they're generating, and they're giving it away for free. And so they decide, you know what, we're going to make a direct payment app. We're going to get 100%.
This is how Fortnite. It's a free game. How they make their money is if you want the cool camouflage. Yeah. You've got to pay us, 50 cents. If you want your gun to look this way instead of that way, you've got to pay us money. And what's funny is, like, I say to my kids, like, I'm a half gamer kind of, sort of. And I say to my kids, I was like, guys, like, because they're like, Dad, I want money to buy this, clothes or buy this hat or whatever. I was like, guys, if it doesn't improve your stats, if it doesn't make you run faster or shoot farther or do more damage or give you some armor, I'm not giving you money for it. I'm like, Dad, but if we don't have the coolest stuff, they'll think we're noobs. And what's funny is a girl in my office heard me saying that, and she's like, "Oh yeah, Judah, she's a gamer. She's a huge gamer, and she's like, "Oh yeah, Judah, you've got to be able to buy your kids that stuff, or otherwise everyone will think they're noobs, and they'll be noob targets." So,
listen, you got to let them know. Look, you earn your own money. Create a business that generates $10 a week. You can take that $10 and buy. I mean, it's not expensive. The stuff on there is not expensive,
but it adds up. It adds up for Epic Games, and it adds up for Fortnite, and Fortnite. What's that?
And it adds up for Apple until recently.
And it adds up for Apple, yeah, absolutely. And I see more and more stuff happening in this venue because Fortnite has done has done concerts recently where you can show up as your little Fortnite character and go to concerts put on by real notable musicians. Not anybody who like Josh and I know or listen to, because we're already too old for this. But there's been a number of people doing cool stuff there.
Well, in an ironic twist of fate, when they were thrown off of the Apple Apps account, when they lost their account.
Right. So here's what happened. So back up. So Fortnite says you can pay us directly. You don't need to pay Apple. And Apple's like, wait, what? No, that's a violation of our terms and agreement. We kick you off. Fortnite was ready for this move.
Yep. And they released an ad. Yeah, they publish an ad. It's a video
parodying
parroting the exact ad that Apple played in 1984. And, it really is it highlights how that company has changed. They've become, they've gone from the new kid on the block with all the cool stuff to, the evil empire that oppresses the little guy. And it's funny when you have a $19 billion company that's the little guy, but, it's pretty interesting. So
all right, we are 6 minutes late, and we have two feel-good stories that we got to get to here. Ladies and gentlemen, please forgive us for not being able to play that ad. We're adding slides to the Friday show. In the future, we will add videos. You just got to give us some more time as we grow and develop the show. Josh and I both have real full-time jobs. I'm a real estate agent, and he is a hard money lender, and you should definitely call us for both of those services. But we are working on developing the show video to be added later. But slides today. Josh, what's our latest slide?
All right, so check this out. There is a new BCS Champion. You may have seen this on Facebook. You may have seen some this news story elsewhere. In July of this year, Bridger Walker, a 6-year-old from Wyoming, he saw a German Shepherd making threatening and aggressive moves towards his 3-year-old sister. He stepped in between the dog and his sister, and the dog ends up attacking him. He got 90 stitches. He was, it was a brutal attack. 90 stitches is nothing. I mean, it's pretty serious.
He's little. He's a third the size you are, Josh. And imagine what 90 stitches on your body would be.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, this kid is a hero. I mean, he probably saved his 3-year-old sister's life.
Look at the look on his face too. Like he's like, dude, this is great. This is wonderful. Like he feels. I mean, he's on top of the world. He's not letting the fact that some dog attacked and mauled him letting him get down. Like he's loving this.
And I mean, talk about selfless. Like you want to talk about a feel-good story. Imagine these parents, like it had to rip their heart out. But imagine how big their hearts got to be seeing that their son is mature enough, is strong enough, has enough, enough of feeling a responsibility for his sister that he steps in knowing that this dog's going to bite him without any fear. I mean, kudos to Bridger Walker. And, I think it's just amazing. It's the kind of leadership that I wish we had more of in this country. Right. We'd love to see that kind of thing from our politicians, maybe not jumping in front of a dog, but, just that strength of character is really something. It's pretty amazing.
You got to give me a love for that.
So the last story of the day is, our weekly Elon Musk edition. 2 items here. Tesla announced Wednesday that they are planning for a stock split. Currently, the stock is around $1,550 per share, and they announced a 5-to-1 split that would occur later on this month. That's pretty amazing.
Do you think that they're doing that just because was it Apple? Or was it Apple that just announced a 4-to-1 split? And we talked about how usually stocks split 2-for-1 every once in a while, every once in a crazy while you'll hear about a 3-to-1 split, but a 4-to-1 split I had never heard of before. And Elon Musk, not to be outdone, goes and does a 5-to-1 split.
Yeah.
So that'll bring their share price down. I mean, obviously, it's going to depend on what trading happens between now and then. But that'll bring their share price down to about $310 per share.
Right. Well, and the cool thing about this, you think about it, if you have one share that's worth $1,500, it splits. Yeah, the share value goes down, but every time it goes up 10 cents, you're actually getting 50 cents of value there.
Right. So that's what happens is because as prices go up, they become less and less available to purchase, because people who I would say, oh, I only have, $100 or $20 or $30 to invest, or I only have, $1,000 to invest, and I want to buy, a couple of different stocks, and that happens a lot. It's funny. I just saw one of the big traders out there is now offering fractionalized shares that you can buy fractionalized shares because of the big five are so expensive right now. But
Yep.
yeah, I mean, so Tesla stock is going to come down to 310. But what that's going to allow is likely a bunch more people to buy in at that price, pushing the value back up. So after a split, usually a lot of people end up purchasing. So because a lot of people purchase after a split, usually even before a split, a lot of people purchase as well too.
That's it. All right. So that was a lot of news this week. A lot of
Yeah.
news this week. Before we go, if you're looking to buy or sell a house, make sure you contact Judah. Slade House Group is a modern real estate group. Judah is an extremely experienced agent. He can help you buy, sell, lease, your properties. Give him a ring today, 717-766-7994. Or you can contact me if you need a hard money loan. Give me a ring, 717-213-8488. We're really easy. We can underwrite and approve on the same day, fund the next day if you've got your ducks in a row. So give us a call. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you like and share. Until Monday, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.
See everybody. Dude, that was so great.